The mixed forests of conifers and broadleafs in northern Japan are full of holes. And this is the culprit, the black woodpecker. He may look like a forest vandal, but he's really a dedicated dad, and when it comes to defending his kids, he's not afraid to put that strong beak to work. Despite the damage he does, he's carved himself an important niche in the forest. Spend a year with the black woodpecker and you'll get the whole story. Hokkaido is the northernmost main island of Japan. Here lies the huge Holano forest, 23,000 hectares in area. It's made up of a mixture of evergreen and deciduous trees, so it provides a variety of habitats. In the last ice age, 20,000 years ago, it was all evergreens, like pines and fir trees. But since things warmed up around here, deciduous broadleafs have moved in too. But no matter what type of tree, they all have something in common. They're full of holes, large holes, and we're not just talking about one or two. Some trees have several, not little hollows where the wood is rotted, but cavities, spaces deliberately dug into the living timber. It's as if tree-hating vandals have run amok with a box of chisels. But despite their appearance, the holes aren't thoughtless acts of destruction. They're an important part of life here in the Holano forest. They're all the work of the black woodpecker. Black woodpeckers are large birds about the size of crows and are found throughout Europe and northern Asia. In those places, the mature forests it lives in are disappearing, so this head-banging bird is becoming harder to see. Here in Japan, it's considered a national treasure, despite its habit of carving up the trees. It might look destructive, but in some ways it contributes to the health of the forest, which is just as well because they carve up an awful lot. As the seasons change, the woodpecker has a hole for every purpose and a purpose for every hole. April is springtime, the season for courting. Although males and females will call to each other, they often signal by rapping on solid wood at up to 10 beats per second. It might be a headache, but it's one way to drum up attention. This female definitely has spring on her mind, but she's looking further into the future. She's been hard at work cutting a hole in this fir tree. Considering its mating season, it's almost certainly a nesting hole. There's still a lot more widening work to be done. And since it's for her mate's chicks too, it's only fair that he does his share of the work while she takes a well-earned break. Despite the name, black woodpeckers aren't completely black. Both wear a small red cap, although the male's is a little larger than the female's. That's the best way to tell them apart, since they both share the jobs around the nest. Time to check his partner's progress before carrying on with the job. Cutting a deep hole in hard living wood isn't easy, at least not for a human woodcarver. A job like this takes a lot of equipment: ladder, chisel, mallet. Lucky for him, the woodpecker has his own built-in set of tools, starting with his own power chisel. That comes in the shape of a 6-centimetre beak. With a sharp wedge to its tip, it's the ideal woodcutter, and the woodpecker puts everything he has into using it. He draws back his strong neck and then strikes with all the power he can muster, between 8,000 and 12,000 times per day. Using your head for a mallet would give anyone else a permanent migraine. But the woodpecker has evolved a shock-absorbent skull. And that's not the only tool in this carpenter's bag. The 4 toes on each foot have curved claws that grip the bark, supporting the woodpecker's body even when it's upright. Balance and extra power come from 2 special tail feathers. The feathers have a strong shaft, and as it strikes the wood, the woodpecker uses the feathers like a third leg, giving extra stability. The shafts of these important feathers aren't just strong, they're also flexible and work like a springboard, helping the woodpecker put a little extra power into each strike. All he needs now is a built-in vacuum cleaner. A month has passed in the forest. It's now May and the deciduous broadleaf trees are covered in bright new leaves. Nest building is over and egg incubation has begun. Time for the female to start her shift on the eggs. But before she can, someone has to get out of the way. She won't have long to sit on the nest. Her 3 or 4 eggs hatch after just 12 or 13 days. Inside, the nest hole is larger than it looks. It's 30 centimetres across and 60 centimetres deep. But despite its size, home comforts are basic. The nest bowl is lined only with wood chips. There are about 100 black woodpeckers living in the Hulano forest. And despite the huge variety of trees to choose from, most of their nest holes are in just one species. They usually choose fir trees, and they're often the big ones with trunks 50 to 60 centimetres in diameter. The firs have tall, straight, smooth trunks and no branches below 10 metres. That makes them difficult for any ground-based predator to climb. This evening, the male has arrived to sit out the night shift on incubation duty. But what about his mate? Where does a mother woodpecker spend her night off? A broad-leafed elm tree grows near the woodpecker's nest site, and there are 2 holes in it, despite the fact that its spreading branches make it easy for predators to climb. The female checks both holes carefully. Looks like she's sleeping here tonight. Throughout the forest, the other black woodpeckers have also chosen roosting trees which they use only for sleeping. All are broadleaf trees. But why do they all have more than one hole? This Judas tree has 5 holes, all in a row. The answer lies inside. The woodpecker holes are connected by the hollow trunk that's formed within the broadleaf tree. So, if a predator climbs up the branchy, accessible broadleaf, the clever woodpecker has an alternative escape hole. The woodpecker manages to find a lot of uses for holes, and not just in the Hulano forest. Woodpeckers are found around the world, on every continent except Antarctica and Australia. There are 200 different species, and wherever they've settled, they've developed a variety of uses for their hole-chiseling talents. In Okinawa's very rainy Yambaru forest, Pryor's woodpecker keeps its nest free of water by placing the entrance on the underside of a slanting tree. America's Sonoran Desert doesn't have many large trees, but it does have plenty of large cacti, and they're full of woodpecker holes. This is where the Gila woodpecker makes its home. By day, the desert is bone dry and baking hot. At night, it's freezing cold. But the fleshy heart of the cactus provides the woodpecker with an air-conditioned chamber to raise its nestlings in. Small holes are the speciality of California's acorn woodpecker. These holes are just the right size to jam acorns in. They have to fit nice and tight so that pesky squirrels can't steal them. A single large granary tree can be a storehouse for over 50,000 acorns. Acorn woodpeckers are extremely social birds, living in groups of up to 15. Everybody in the group does their bit to build up a winter stash of nutty treats. Back in Holano Forest, it's now June, and it seems that every animal in the neighborhood is busily raising a family. The sika deer is lucky. She has just one fawn to feed. But with 4 hungry chicks to keep topped up, the black woodpeckers are busier than ever. Thanks to their parents' tireless efforts, the chicks grow quickly. But they aren't the only young birds growing up in a woodpecker nest this summer. One of last year's nests has been converted and modernized by a European nuthatch. The nuthatch's bill isn't built for drilling, so without the woodpeckers it would be without a home. But it's a much smaller bird, about the size of a sparrow, so it's used mud to make a cozy adobe-style entranceway. Black woodpecker carpentry skills are appreciated by many throughout the forest. The occupant of this old nest hole is another of the woodpecker's grateful tenants. A mandarin duck. These ducks usually nest at woodpecker holes far from the ground. Once again, the hole provides a snug refuge from predators. But despite the difficult access, woodpecker nests can be reached by predators. And one of the most deadly doesn't even need legs to climb. While the parents are away from the chicks, a Japanese rat snake has slithered up the trunk of the nest tree. As well as frogs or rodents, rat snakes feed on eggs and young birds. The male woodpecker realizes something is wrong. He knocks on the tree to threaten the snake and distract it from the chicks. But mere distractions aren't going to be enough. The rat snake fights hard, but is up against a devoted parent with a sharp wood-carving beak. The snake is defeated. But what of the nestlings? It was a close call, but the family is safe. It's a busy time for the woodpecker pair. As the chicks grow, their appetites are growing too. Their parents now bring them food about 30 times a day. Although the adults will eat a variety of insects, it seems they feed their growing offspring exclusively on ants, and ants of a particular sort. To get them, the adult woodpeckers use their wood-carving skills once again. This tree is dead, and its trunk decaying badly, but that doesn't mean it isn't full of life. Nothing in the forest is wasted. Carpenter ants make their nests in softwood like this, although they will eat into living trees or even human homes. Digging into the softwood is relatively easy, and the reward is definitely worthwhile. At about 1 centimetre long, carpenter ants are among the largest. This nest should provide a few good meals for the young woodpeckers. But the black woodpecker's built-in chisel is only half the toolkit needed for this job. Its tongue is surprisingly long, about 20 centimetres, with a barbed tip for spearing insects. To make sure the ants don't get away, the tip of the tongue is covered by sticky saliva. In other countries, black woodpeckers use this beak and tongue combination to raid ant hills. They're the perfect accessories for ant catching. Except for woodpeckers, the ants have no natural enemies, so the woodpecker helps protect the trees. By late June, the chicks are about a month old and almost as big as the adults. This chick is impatient to be fed and doesn't mind letting everybody know. The adult is well within earshot, but isn't in any hurry to deliver the goods. The chick is used to having its every demand met, but the adult has good reason not to approach the loud-mouthed youngster, and it's not just because of the noise. There's nothing like the promise of a few juicy ants to encourage a chick to try flying for the first time. But it won't be truly independent for a while. After fledging, all 4 chicks will continue to follow their parents for the rest of summer and learn how to live in the forest. By October, the forest's deciduous trees show their autumn colours, and the coming winter will see them shed their leaves completely. Winter is harsh in this part of the world. Air temperatures can drop 30 degrees below freezing. The young woodpeckers are now looking after themselves. Woodpeckers don't migrate to warmer places like other birds, so they must make do with Holano Forest's winter menu. This early in winter, food isn't too hard to find. There are likely to be some ants hidden in this dead log. But by February, winter does its worst. A storm has left the ground covered in a metre of snow. Although they prefer carpenter ants, black woodpeckers will feed on other insect species such as beetles. But at this time of year, there are very few insects to be caught out in the open. Worse yet, fallen logs are now well buried, and the woodpecker's usual ant nests are completely out of reach. With all easier options close to it, there is only one way that the woodpecker can keep itself from starvation until the snow thaws. But first it has to find the right tree. This isn't the one. This one seems to have passed the woodpecker's suitability test, and the bird is hard at work chopping a hole deep into the core of what looks like a healthy fir tree. Chopping into the living tree takes a huge amount of effort on the woodpecker's part, so it must be after something important. It keeps up the chopping for at least an hour. Finally, it's found something in the darkness at the back of the hole. The tree only looks healthy from the outside. Inside, there's a thriving nest of carpenter ants, the woodpecker's favorite food. But what are the ants doing in a living tree? And how could the woodpecker have possibly known they were there? The answer lies in a fungus. Some fungi, like bracket fungi, infect trees, decaying them from the inside out. Carpenter ants can then nest inside the soft, dead wood. The tunneling of the ants makes even more room for the fungus, which rots the tree even more, eventually killing it. The trees look normal from the outside, but by tapping the tree, the woodpecker can distinguish between a healthy tree and one that's soft and rotten inside. That way, it finds a source of winter food. Nesting holes, roosting holes with escape hatches, summer feeding holes, and now winter survival holes. The woodpecker's amazing carpentry skills not only keep it alive, but also contribute to the health of the forest, and in more ways than cleaning up insect infestations. The holes that help to destroy the trees actually help to build the forest, as the coming of spring shows. March. The spring thaw is underway and life is returning to the forest. Woodpeckers drilling hastens the end of some trees, but it also clears the way for younger trees, benefiting not just the woodpecker, but the whole forest. Fallen logs can even make ideal nurseries for seedlings struggling for light. The woodpecker may look like a crazy woodcarver, but in this forest, he's a busy and important bird. This isn't the sound of a forest vandal. It's the sound of a very creative carpenter. Without the woodpecker's holes, many of the other birds would have nowhere to live, and tree-tunneling carpenter ants would go uncontrolled. The black woodpeckers may need a mature forest to survive, but the forest needs the woodpeckers every bit as much. And that's the whole story.